created everything. Look what a powerful being you are. You did these things, but now you're in a human body, you forget the power you have.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination.
Welcome to Metamystics, where you don't know what you don't know. Today, we have a returning champion guest. We love her very much. Welcome back to the show, Candace Craw-Goldman. How are you?
I am so excited to talk to you, and I'm looking back into my memory banks. I don't think I've been described as a champion of anything, so This is exciting.
Oh, I mean, you are the absolute best. Love having you on over here because there's so much knowledge and so much experience that you have with everything to do with past life regressions and, you know, your association with Dolores Cannon. And I feel like it's just, I don't want to ever let Dolores's or your teachings just ever go to the wayside. I mean, I know that Dolores, I honestly feel like right now, Dolores is more popular now than she's ever been. With how many videos and so many people are talking about her books, and people are just now discovering, you know, past life regression and everything. And it is amazing to see. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, there is absolutely something to it. Anybody that's ever, you know, had a past life regression, I'm like, all right, first of all, it's not what you think it is. Like, no matter what you think it is, until you've done it, you have no idea. Right. I mean,
Right.
And that was my personal experience. I went into it and I was like, oh, I know how this is going to go. I read, you know, all of Dolores's books, and I've seen all the interviews and all the shows. I have a good idea about exactly how it's going to go. And then you do it and you're like, oh, this is totally not what I thought it was. But in a good way, though.
Yeah, this is so exciting. You know, when Dolores first died, I was truly afraid for her legacy. I didn't know if people were going to remember her. And as you were talking right now, it reminds me a little bit of Vincent van Gogh. You know, Vincent van Gogh is one of the most well-known painters on the planet. And even when he died, nobody knew who he was. Right.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of that. So there's and I must say, her work has carried her forward without any help from what was left of her original support team and company, shall we say. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but the people who now support her course and stuff, they really don't do the work. They do, of course, promote her work. They promote her classes. They promote her books and all of her collected work, which is wonderful and laudable, but they don't do any more exploration. So it has stopped there as far as Dolores, and now it's up to the rest of us.
No, I agree. And that's whenever I initially found you, I was like, oh my God, it's continuing. And I feel like that's exactly what Dolores would have done. She would have allowed it to evolve and continue and not just hit a standstill, you know? And what I love really the most about, especially your kind of branching off from her work, is that now it's more inclusive of the future, as well as possible other dimensions, and you can tell that it's an evolution of Dolores's work, like kind of like how you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though Dolores was touching into those places when she passed, she had a really interesting teaching style. She was in her mid 80s, and she actually still, even though students had already proven it really wasn't going to be the case, she still taught every one of her classes as if everyone sitting in front of her was going to go through the evolution the same way she did, which was basically like, well, first you're going to start with past lives, and then the other stuff's going to happen. And of course, it didn't really work like that. There are those of us who've gotten into this who just instantly went into different places because humanity, of course, is expanding and consciousness is evolving.
Right, right. And one thing that, you know, she always brought up, and I think it was referenced a lot in her books and in a lot of her talks and everything, is that time isn't linear. And that's something that I feel like some people are starting to get their head around it. But honestly, trying to understand that time isn't linear, that yesterday isn't yesterday, tomorrow isn't tomorrow, today isn't even today, really, it's all just right now. It's all happening right now. It is such a hard concept to grasp because because of the way that we experience so-called reality within the realm of time. And that's what's so fascinating, because you'll see people, they'll have a past life regression, and all of a sudden they're living in some futuristic city, or maybe there's some kind of transhumanist kind of thing to where they're part droid and part human, or you know what I mean? Like, it's the craziest things that will happen. And one thing that I find, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. My last time getting hypnotized, it's been a while, but my last time getting hypnotized for a past life regression, I was like this watcher or guardian of sorts over an entire world. And I wasn't sure, like, my job was literally just to watch over, I guess, all of the consciousness on that planet. And I ended up getting like really like bummed out because people either forgot that I existed and didn't know that they can call upon me for their help or something like that. And I saw that the world was literally going to hell in a handbasket. And I was like, if they would just call on me, I can't intervene, unless somebody calls on me. And I was getting like real frustrated and everything. And so I was like, you know what? I need to make a bigger difference, because these people, they're only viewing me as a myth. They think that it's just a made up story, and it was just the strangest thing. And, what happened as a result of that, I ended up going to talk to somebody who I guess was the manager of this department or something like that. But it ended, and I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up being Odin, like, of Norse mythology. He was sitting in his throne, and he had his two dogs next to him, and he had an eye patch. I don't know why I didn't put it together. Maybe I didn't really understand Norse mythology back then, but this figure appeared, and I said, look, I just want to be able to have more of an impact. Like, I feel like I can't help with anything. I was like, maybe if I can just get some boots on the ground. And he takes his, I don't know if it was his sword or his, wand or whatever it was, and he like knighted me. And he was all right, yeah, basically I'll send you. And I didn't know exactly what to expect. And the moment that he touched, so he went left shoulder, then right shoulder, then touched my head. As soon as he touched my head with his staff, I was coming out of the womb of a woman. And that's whenever the past life ended. And I was like, oh my God. And oftentimes I've thought, now I don't know how to apply a lot of this kind of stuff, because if you say that you are that, then people look at you like you're crazy. And I'm like, whatever, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. But whenever I, for some reason, it feels like that was my most recent incarnation.
This is so exciting. First of all, I have to tell you, I have a cat named Odin.
Wow, what are the odds?
And he is the overseer of this house, and he's very regal, and he's huge, and he's in charge of everything. So that's cool.
That's interesting.
I have quite a number of times had regressions where people are either observers or watchers or caretakers, because that's the expanded, one of the expanded aspects that we have as we progress in consciousness. And at the same time, even that's not linear, right? There's a part of you that has done that or whatever. And then again, there's even this. This was some of the conversation I had just earlier today, which is we can tap into consciousness streams that maybe aren't wrapped around our precise soul explorations or even components, because we are multidimensional. So not only can we explore really our own, integral energies, but when it is offered and when it is available, we can actually tap into consciousness streams that are learning, that are offered out there for others to tap into. So I've seen this with clients sometimes, because I will have regressions, and sometimes, and actually quite often, they're pretty close in time together where I'm doing them, where they're nearly identical, right? And it's like it's the same sort of experience and the same sort of thing. And that's because the energy is sort of collecting, right? The one that I needed to hear it has come to me through two other people. They can come and that energy is coming and finding a connection with a place and a way for them to understand it more fully, and it's very magnetic and attractive that way. It's actually, we call this metaphysical or woo woo or outside, but it really, it's energetic physics, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, just with all of my research and a lot of my own like deep introspection and, shadow work and meditation and everything else, I've come to the conclusion, and now the famous saying on the show is that you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm always open to evolving what I have learned. And I'm also open to being wrong. Like, I think that a lot of people, they go on like this spiritual journey and they're like, I know this, I know that, I know this, I know that. I'm like, I don't know. Because I feel like there's two sides to that coin, like if you know something, then by default, you're saying what something isn't, right? Like there's a polarity to everything. And so if you know for a fact that this is true, then at the same time, you're saying, I know for a fact that this is untrue, right? And so that's where I don't know what I don't know kind of comes into play. And I like to try and remain really fluid with a lot of these kind of ideas and everything, and really just try and build almost some kind of foundational truth on top of that. And so, in my opinion, where I'm at right now, and it feels the most right, is that everything is one, and we all come from the source, or come from the universe, come from God, however you want to look at it. And essentially, and this is just getting weird, that we're almost information collectors for the one source.
Oh, absolutely. This is exactly where I am.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah.
The exact same thing. I like to think of it as a fireworks. So if you think about like a firework going off, the kind that has stages, right? Like it goes up and then it has that, and then they go out and they go out and they go out. In my head, that's sort of the Big Bang or the out breath of God, right? And I think that God does this, or source, or however you want to call that, the creator does that over and over and over again. Because if you think about it, it's sort of like, well, if God is all knowing, omniscient, knows everything, is everything, has always existed, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? So what he did, or what that energy did, was separate itself out in that way, Big Bang, out breath, whatever, and then for a time takes all those little pieces and has those little pieces pretend, or as if, and not have a memory or an understanding, and he's wanting to know, how long does that take for those pieces to come back, right? And then at some point, the in-breath comes in, and I've come to believe that in-breath started in 2012.
Oh,
I do. And I think that in-breath also explains the Mandela effect and some timeline issues.
wow. I've never heard it put that way. There's definitely something going on with the Mandelas. I mean, there is nobody out there that can convince me that some things within the Mandela effect, because there's thousands of them by now, but like, there are some things I know for a fact used to be one way, and now they're trying to say, oh no, it's always been this way. I'm like, get out of here with that nonsense. I don't buy it for a second.
No. And a lot of it has to do with this collapsing of timelines. So if you keep the firework illustration in mind, that is, timelines are collapsing back into each other. So as the memories are coming back into each other, that's why this little part remembers one thing and this remembers another. I'll tell you a quick little story about how that works and how it works so nicely in our family. My husband loves going to this place called HTO. I don't know if you have it down in Houston, but it's like this tea place, and it's got lots of different kinds of iced teas and flavored teas and everything. And he's an absolute addict and he loves it. But he always got these jugs and he didn't want to use the jugs anymore. And he ordered on Amazon these 2 glass, they almost look like the old whiskey jugs, the big gallon jugs that's got the little handle that's glass, and you could throw it, that old fashioned jug. And I remember talking to him going, I can't kind of see you carrying around because that's a pretty heavy thing. And, you drop it. You really want those glass jugs? He's like, yeah, I really think I'm going to like this. And anyway, he got these 2 and he got 2. So, and he's like, I got 2. So one could be washing while one could be using. And I was so weirded out. It just didn't seem like him either. I was like, okay, whatever, honey. Right. And after about a week of using them, he went, you're right. I'm really not, I'm not into this. I'm going to get a steel thermos thing instead. I'm going to do that because I can hand it over to the people through the drive-through and it just works better. And he's like, what do I do with these? I'm like, you know what? I'm sure I'm going to come up with some way where I'd like to use those. Just put them on the top shelf in the garage over by the refrigerator, just like right above the refrigerator. And you know what? I just now found a use for them. I was like, oh, I know. I'm going to use them and I was going to put some extra water out in my barn instead of having bottled water. I'm getting away from plastics. And I go out there and those jugs aren't there. And I'm like, okay, I know I didn't do them. So I asked my husband, he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I said, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? Now, my daughter, who was here over Christmas, helped tidy up some things in the garage. I instantly called her and I went, remember those glass jugs? She said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, that'll make you feel crazy, right?
Right. But here's the really, really cool thing. Even before I made the call to my daughter, because I wanted to see if she remembered it too, my husband, because we've been through this enough times, my husband said, different timeline. And let me tell you what, that's a really happy thing in a marriage. We don't argue about anything like that anymore. I told you this, I gave you that, you said you would, da da da. We just go, different timeline.
Yeah.
And we carry on and things are more peaceful that way.
Oh,
but
my.
it does weird you out a little bit, right? Because this wasn't just a tiny thing. It had many parts. Ordering from Amazon, trying it out for a week, back and forth between the windows. What are we going to do with these jars? Bobbity, bobbity, bob. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, and the more I think about it, see, I think certain events change things. So as I'm pondering this latest one, I'm going, well, when did that happen? Well, I had a significant dream about 3 weeks ago. And it was all about, it was a teaching dream for me to do some different things regarding my physical health. I got into in my dream a different vehicle, which tells me a lot. There's a lot of dream symbology there. It was a futuristic vehicle. It had these 2 spaces. Anyway, when I woke up from that dream, see, I made a switch. I switched timelines that night with that dream. I now am in this timeline with my husband and daughter who didn't have anything with glass jugs. And now there is a me in a different timeline in that glass jug one. And I think she's going to have some more physical issues than I am here because I decided I didn't want them.
Wow. And this is literally every religion and form of spirituality out there will tell you, do not get too attached to the material realm. And now this might sound crazy to a lot of people that are listening, but anybody that has ever done a past life regression, gone in any form of trance state whatsoever, everybody does it every single day, all the time. We're constantly going from beta to alpha to theta. Some people like to include gamma, and then into delta every night with the sleep, right? And so I feel like we're constantly changing frame rates within different modalities of our lives, and it doesn't really matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter. The physical life absolutely matters, but it is there as a lesson and less for something to you be attached to. And this isn't a Mandela effect, but I do want to give you something. I wanted to say this. I've been holding on to this for a couple of days. This is some of the craziest. This might very well be the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in a good way. or in a really trippy way. So this past weekend, my wife and I, we went out to Las Vegas because we wanted to, we bought tickets to WrestleMania. We're huge wrestling dorks, right? And it's also where we got married. So it was kind of an anniversary thing. So we go out there, and Uber rides are uber expensive out there. And so we were like, well, what are some other ways in which we can kind of travel to and from, you know, to the arena and all these other places we wanted to go to? And so we found that you can actually use the monorail system, and they have some kind of tram system over there as well. And we were kind of going from one to another to get from the stadium and back to the hotel. So one day, I believe it was our second day there, we got on the monorail system, and there was this guy, and he goes, and he's just staring at me. And I was like, what is he staring for? You know, I mean, it's a stranger, so I don't know what his thing is, but anyway, he's staring at me. He goes, I'm sorry, I don't mean to stare, but you look strikingly similar. Has anybody ever told you that you look like the actor? His name is Stephen Amell. And anybody that's ever, he's not like a huge, very well-known actor, but he was in the TV show called The Arrow. And anybody that's into like superhero and Marvel and DC and all that stuff, you know what I'm talking about. But and that's how I knew him. And other people have referenced it before. And it was so crazy because he goes, you look exactly like Stephen Amell. And I was like, he goes, has anybody ever told you that? And I said, yeah, it's people have mentioned it a time or two before. And he goes, oh man, it's just so weird. You know, like you look so much like him. And I was like, well, you know, I've heard it before. And we just went on about our business. So we get off the monorail, and the next place we have to go to is, I can't remember if it was MGM or Mandalay Bay, one of these other like casino hotels, right? We go over there, and I think it was MGM actually. We go over there, and I'm like, you know what? We got a little bit of time to burn before the event. Let me sit down at one of these blackjack tables. I'll just throw $40, see what happens, right? And because I'm not a huge gambler, so whenever I do, it's just like I hate losing money, so I'm just gonna play with $40. So I sit down at this table, and there's two people that are sitting there. And I'm having a conversation, and there's these two guys, and you know, one of them is like he doesn't really know all the rules of blackjack, so I'm helping him. And he's like, he had like a 13, and the dealer was showing a 4, and he goes, should I hit right here? And I said, well, if you shouldn't hit, because there's a higher chance that the dealer's going to bust if they're showing that they have to hit on a card. And he didn't end up hitting, and the dealer busted, and he goes, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And we were kind of shooting the shit back and forth. The dealer asked him, she was like, so what are you in town for? What do you do? And he goes, oh yeah, I'm an actor. And he goes, I actually just got back from Canada from shooting this movie, and it was called like Little Lorraine. And I was like, wait a second. And at first I was already looking at him, you know, I was like, that can't be him. Right. And so then after he left the table, I looked up Little Lorraine, looked up the cast, and lo and behold, it's fucking Stephen Amell. And I was like, literally 10 minutes ago, somebody just told me that I look like you. And of all of the casinos, of all of the blackjack tables, of all the times that I would ever sit down at a Vegas blackjack table, it is with the guy that I just got told that I look like 10 minutes ago. I was like, what are the odds of that? Right?
Now, did you look at him thinking, dude, you look like me while you were looking at him?
Well, I was looking at him, and I was like, you know, because I had just heard that I look like Stephen Amell. And so my mind is already on track of like, all right, well, now I'm going to be looking for people that maybe, am I going to be looking for Stephen Amell? So I didn't want to jump to conclusions and assume that it was him, because I mean, anybody that has this face, it's like, first of all, you're blessed. No, I'm just kidding. But, but I was like, you know, it's not, he doesn't have like really crazy standout-ish features. He kind of looks like just your regular average dude. And so whenever I saw him, and I was like, that can't be him. There's no way. Right. And then he told me that he was in the movie and everything. And I was like, and so I said, after he said that he was in a movie, I knew it was him, because I was like, how many actors are going to look like that? Exactly. And so I was like, I just said out loud, I was like, because it clicked at the table, and I was like, we live in a goddamn matrix. Like, that's what's going on here. And I didn't say anything else. And then I went and talked to his buddy, because we were both cashing out of our chips at the same time, right? And I was like, hey, do you remember whenever I said, do we live in a matrix? And he goes, yeah. I didn't know what you were referring to. And I said, well, I was kind of in shock. And I told him the whole story, and he was like, no fucking way. What are the odds of that? And I said exactly what I was thinking. So it was just so far out there to where I'm almost like, okay, the dream has to be collapsing in on itself. That's what it feels like to me, you know?
Exactly that. Exactly that. The collapsing in on it, and also why and how manifestation can seem to be a little easier to do these days. And really why you really need to pay attention to what you're focusing on. The things that you put your attention on, you really need to pay attention to, not dwelling on or looking at or reveling in, or in things that you don't prefer, because the mind, the energetics is just going to increase it. Dolores knew all of that, and as a matter of fact, Dolores, this is why in her method she didn't want anyone to talk about things like entity attachments or negative kinds of experiences. I truly believe, and she talked about it sideways a little bit. She knew all of that was out there, that versions of that manifested in humans' lives, but she shut it down. She even shut down the conversations around it because she didn't want anyone talking about it, because she fully understood the energetic implications, that if you sat around a table and you talked about that for hours, then that's what you were going to be bringing into your world. And it's a fine line to walk doing this kind of work right now, because some people who really learn a lot about, let's just say, entity releasement, this is nothing that I really focus on or talk about much at all. I acknowledge a portion of sessions end up like that. 18 years. This is my 18th year of doing this, and I've never had to deal with that yet. But I will not say that some of my colleagues have not. But Dolores very rarely or didn't. I sure don't. And one of the reasons I don't is I don't talk about it. I don't look at it. I don't focus in on it. And other people are like, but you have to because it really exists. I'm like, nope, it's not in my contract. Not what I'm interested in. Not what I want to bring into my world. You go right ahead.
Yeah.
Have that be your specialty.
Well, and for some reason, and it's happened with me plenty of times, there is some like kind of self-sabotage switch within so many people, including myself. And I almost have to prevent myself from doing that and become aware that, like, oh my God, I cannot take any more steps back. Like, I just can't do it. I'm trying to build. I'm not trying to constantly, take away. And it's just about becoming aware of it. Now, one thing that I have absolutely grown to know, and I don't want to say I know, but I have a general belief, is that our thoughts are not our own. So whenever you're constantly getting this stream of thoughts and this stream of energy that is almost coming in, and a lot of thoughts seem to come out of nowhere, I am of the firm belief that, our antenna is just, our antenna has a frequency, just like a radio. And every time we are a certain frequency, you are essentially opening the door for that realm of information to flood inside your consciousness. And so if our thoughts are not our own, then we shouldn't attach to even our thoughts. And if all we are is essentially just observers to the information flow that is coming in constantly, then if a bad thought or a negative thought or anything like that decides to come into your consciousness, that it is almost your duty to realize that information is coming in and don't attach yourself to it. And because if you think about it, how many people out there believe that they are their thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Like, I believe that I am a thought. And one easy way of kind of skating past that is that whenever I was, I don't know, I think I was like 9 years old, I was obsessed with Britney Spears, right? Like, I wanted to marry her one day. That's the stream of thoughts that were coming into my mind, all the imagination. This is what we'll do. We're going to have these kids, whatever, right? I don't feel that way anymore, obviously. And not to say that she's a bad person. Hey, she's on her own path, whatever. A weird path, but I'm not judging. But if I would attach myself to my thoughts, then why are we not attaching ourselves to all of our thoughts that we've ever had? And so if I don't identify as that, then how can I identify with the current thoughts that I already have, that I'm having right now? And you know damn well I'm not going to be attaching myself to the same thoughts 5 or 10 years from now. It's a constant evolution of it, right? And so the goal is to not become so attached to your thoughts, and definitely don't infuse them with emotion and feeling, because that's only going to, bring it into like more physical existence, especially the bad ones. So I just wanted to go there with it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. For me, it started happening a little bit when I would get angry about something or feel slighted or something for whatever reason. And I started to sort of imagine me being here looking at me being upset. And I started seeing, and I even had clients who weren't quite connected to their bodies in some ways, because they were more of the observer, going all the way back to the first part of our conversation. They're being the observer of this human life. And once you can kind of see that you are all of these different pieces of yourself, and the best way to, I think, keep going forward, because it can be, I see what about this going backward stuff, sometimes I think we all have that. And that's when we're really focused on the smaller, more dense portion of our consciousness. And a lot of that has to do with programming. We are attached to our programming, attached to our parenting, attached to our, the program that the first system that we plugged into in our families. And the goal really, to me, seems to be like, if you can kind of back up from that a little bit, because not only does it help your own life run a little smoother, it allows you to be more magnanimous and more accepting of when others also reduce themselves down to these more coarse elements, and you're like, I know what you're doing there. That's very human, and we're kind of leaving that behind, and we are expanding like this. But yeah, I think that's worthy. It takes me back to this idea. And I remember the first time I ever heard it, and I went, that's not right. And I'm like, yeah, it is right. It's like, you actually have to agree, and you actually agree to accepting a thought before you have it, if you think about it. Because if you can really pay attention to your thoughts, and you start to have a thought, you can stop it.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like step one in all of this, because when you can even do that, then who and what is that is looking at a thought that's beginning to form? Well, then it can't be you. It can't be emanating. The thought can't be you. If it's emanating and you're starting to see it form, then you can't be it. You must be outside of it. So if you see that, if you can do that, then you're well on your way.
Right. I mean, and I think that just points us, not us as humans, but us as uh, source consciousness, the spark of God, however you want to look at it. It points to us as being multidimensional. Because if you can literally witness a thought turning from a seed into and blossoming into a flower or a tree inside your own mind, then how can you identify with that? Because you would have to imagine that if you're just the thought, then how are you having a thought on top of a thought, observing a thought? It makes no sense.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Which is why these sessions are so amazing, because you can do all that kind of telescoping. You can be, you can keep going backwards. Somebody was asking me about, they were asking me about the sort of matrix, the controlling mechanism, shall we say, on the planet. And the question that she asked was, well, do you think we agreed to that? That we agreed to these controllers, these manipulating forces? And I said, well, that's the issue, isn't it? It depends on what perspective we're talking about. From one perspective, absolutely we agreed to it. right?
Subconsciously.
Absolutely. But if you're in a different perspective where you're still in the duality thing where you don't want that control, then you're not agreeing with it, you know?
Well, and this is why it's so important to observe and stay in the moment as much as humanly possible. Now, I'm sure that this varies greatly, between individual to individual, but it's said on average the human has 60,000 thoughts per day.
Oh, wow.
I don't know about you. I'm definitely not aware of probably at least three-quarters of them. Right. And so it's just kind of almost like subconscious programming that is constantly running in the background. And it's so subtle that like you ever like become aware in the middle of a thought? Like it's so strange. You're like, oh, wait. Yeah. Why am I thinking that? It's like because our brains are always going, and that's obviously why we dream, and why we're able to observe what we observe within meditation or in float tanks or in any kind of trance state. There's always something going on, and even people you'll see, like I'm kind of somebody that does this as well, where you have this spot, and men are definitely known for doing this. I don't know about women, but we have this spot that we like to go to in our mind called the nothing box. And even in the nothing box, there is still information, there's still thoughts. It's just that we're not observing it. And that's what makes it nothing. It's not that the programming isn't still going, it's that we're not paying attention to it, which is what most people are doing all the time anyway. Instead, most males as far as I'm concerned, I don't know about women, but because women tend to be a lot more conscious of their thoughts. And that's why like men are like, oh my God, is that all you do is just think all day? It just seems exhausting. It's like, look, you don't really need to think to observe a thought. It's, you know what I mean? Like, and so even whenever you're in the nothing box, there's still stuff going on in the background. Which, so in that respect, as far as did we allow all this stuff to happen? Did we sign up to be here at this moment, at this time? Did we sign up to have all of these horrible things to experience within our lifetime, or to be able to observe, kind of from afar in our lifetime with all the wars and everything else? It's kind of like, yeah, we absolutely agreed to it. You might not have remembered. Most of us don't remember signing contracts, but it's not necessarily a pen to pad kind of contract. And it goes down even into the microcosm, kind of like just what you were talking about. Like anytime you have a feeling, and this is why I love like certain gurus and stuff like that, because they'll say, like Sadhguru, he says, I will never allow anybody to feel something, or I'll never allow anybody to make me feel something. I allow myself to feel certain things. And so if somebody tells you, oh, you suck at your job, or, what are you doing? You can't drive, or whatever it is. You're like, and most people will be like, oh my God, he said that I suck. I can't believe this. I don't suck. Let me show you how much I don't suck. And then it becomes into a whole egotistical kind of situation. But you're essentially accepting words into your mind, and you're allowing it with your emotions and your thoughts to almost multiply into something that is becoming materially real inside your own body. Whereas if you just said, oh, I know I don't suck, so I'm not even going to allow that to bother me. Well, now that feeling of dread and disgust and hatred towards the other person can't manifest within you because you blocked it before it ever even took a step inside the club in the first place.
Once you acknowledge something, this helped me with that idea anyway. It might help somebody else who's listening. If you take us back into our evolution, way back, caveman or before days, or even, some very primitive life days, humans in general, we don't do well alone. This is why solitary confinement is considered one of the worst things that you can do to a prisoner or somebody that you wish to punish. And to banish someone from the community, a human community, especially an early incarnation type human, to be kicked out of the tribe or the clan or the group, it was death. So a lot of that is carryover from our deep deep historical roots of our lives depending on it. However, you can see, I'm sure you can, huge swaths of society that the Milgram experiment and all that just completely plays out over and over and over again, because they're going to do whatever the group is doing so that they don't get kicked out of the group. And there's those 20% of people, I bet you're part of the 20, I know that I am, that look at, I mean, from the beginning, we're like, what are you talking about? It's so obviously not that. Why are you agreeing? And this consensus reality, this consensus thing, well, we're still working on it as humans. Let's put it that way.
Oh, there is no doubt about it. It is just so lockstep. Like so many people, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way you exactly believe what is the train of thought that allowed you to arrive at this destination to be fact? Like, are you just going along to get along, because most people are? Are you just going along because you admire a certain person that has this thought or this identity? Then that's okay. But you can't say that it's you. Like, you can say that you're attracted to this idea, and maybe that's what allowed you to believe something like this, but it is a belief. It is not an experience, because most people will say, I believe in this religion. I believe in this spiritual philosophy. I believe in this side of the political spectrum. And you start to really break down why they think that way. And they're bringing up all the same exact talking points that you've heard your whole life. So it's like, you don't even have the right talking points as to how you got here. You're just copying and pasting what everybody else has been saying.
Do you believe in the God-shaped hole? Have you heard about that concept, the God-shaped hole?
God-shaped hole? No, I never heard of that.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm trying to lean back into all the shows I've listened to yours. I don't know about how you feel about controversy, but I mean, when people say I believe, so this is going to sound random and off the wall, but I'll make my point. So there's people out there that be like, I believe in vaccines. I believe in them. Like, I believe in them. Well, that's belief, that kind of stuff. That's like a religion, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's science, and there's studies that this, and there's quantifiable that, and there's comparative things, and there's a lot of different ways you can do science. But if you bring belief into stuff, that's a religion. And a lot of the people who believe in stuff, like who say things like, I believe in science, or I believe in vaccines, a lot of those people, they will claim to be atheists. They will claim to not believe in God, Christianity, Judaism, or any sort of creative aspect that created the reality as we know it. And so there are people who really look at that and say, well, that is a God-shaped hole in you that you have filled with something else. And I see a lot of that being a part of what we're talking about here.
Right. Kind of like the, I've heard it referred to, and this may be something different, but the God of the gaps. Have you heard of this?
No, I have not heard that.
Yeah, it's like whatever science can't prove, like you just fill God in. Like you fill it in with God. It's like, well, until we can figure it out, and then it's just God. And I mean, the real secret of the story is that it's all God, right? Like,
Thank you. I think so.
There is no such thing as anything besides God. And, from my opinion, like it's all one thing. And so, I don't know. It's silly.
Even as a kid, I was like that. Even as a kid, I remember people being like, creationism, evolution, creationism. I remember being like 6 or 7 and going, why can't there be both?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Why can't God have created the thing that brings some evolution?
Exactly. Well, because people are so attached to the idea of being like, and this is where it's going to get maybe a little heretical biblically, but people are very attached to God creating Adam and Eve. And so Adam and Eve, they could talk, they could communicate with God. They ended up, they formed Cain and Abel and the whole society and everything. But you look at it and people absolutely existed, even in the Bible, before Adam and Eve, because whenever Cain was cast out, he didn't want to go out there with all the rest of the savage people. That was his whole thing, right? And so people don't want to be associated with that. And so they'll say, well, creation started with Adam and Eve, even though there were already fucking people here. And I'm like, well, so what happened with those people? Was that not God's creation? And if that wasn't God's creation, then how did they get here? You know, how did that happen?
So many. I love when you do all of these musings on some of your other shows. I'm like, I usually listen to you in the car, and I'm going, "That's right." And I'm talking to you all the time like that. You ask the best questions. A lot of my own thoughts are voiced as you're going through all of your stuff. And I have to tell you, I know I told you personally, but I have to tell you this anyway. I love your deep dives. Oh, I love it when you get nerdy. I love it so much when you read and you go, wow, wait a second, and like that discovery thing. Oh, that was so great. And your deep dive into some of the Robert Monroe stuff. I cannot tell you how much I benefited from that, the energy that you gave me. And I've never gotten to listen to any of those tapes. And over the years, I've wondered if I should ever think about investing in that. But I was so curious about so much of the things, and you came up with a lot of information that I've been wondering about for a while.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just curiosity-driven deep dives is really what it is, because you hear about Robert Monroe, and it is awesome. All the gateway process, and it was something that was, hidden away from the CIA, and then only, released like 10 or 15 or maybe 20 years after the whole concept. And you start looking into the certain people that were associated with it. And Robert Monroe gets really a lot of the credit for all of it. And rightfully so. I mean, the guy was a pioneer in his day, but where did he get all of his learnings? That's what I want to know. And whenever you're going through the entire gateway process, you see this one name that is constantly brought up all the time, and nobody ever seems to mention him. I'm like, okay, let's learn more about this guy then. And one of the things that Itzhak Betov, shout out. But one of the things that really blew my mind as far as his whole concept. Now, and one thing that I loved about him is that he always said, this is probably going to sound stupid if you read this in the future, because my thoughts are always evolving. He never even wanted to write a book because he knew that his understanding was constantly evolving. Sure. But unfortunately, he ended up dying in the world, like in the country's worst plane crash of all time, which was really crazy back in the 80s with very weird, peculiar timing. But anyway, one of the things that he said that really blew my mind is because people just assume that all of reality and everything was all created at the Big Bang. And I've always had such a hard time with that, because if everything was created right then that means, and they say that within the Big Bang, that time was created. The dimension of time was created. And I'm like, there's no way, because time is linear. So time had to have always existed, right? If you look at it like that. And one thing that he said is that if there is a black hole, then there must be a white hole. Because whenever something gets sucked into the black hole, then it can't go nowhere. There is no such thing as non-existence. Therefore, it has to be then transferred. If we go based upon the third law of thermodynamics that says energy can't be created nor destroyed, only transferred. And if that's the case, then the things that are getting sucked into a black hole, aka maybe, how the whole Big Bang probably happened in the first place, was everything was condensed into this black hole, essentially like formed into this one little tiny nugget of energy as far as the Big Bang goes, and then exploded out from that. But he's saying that, no, it went through the black hole, appeared on the other side, almost like the upside down in Stranger Things, and was manifested there until it got sucked into its own black hole and then manifested on the other side of that. So that would show the perpetual existence of time forever. Right there, in my opinion. And I think that's why people have memories of stuff that like didn't necessarily happen on this side of the black hole. Maybe it existed on the other side. I don't know. It just, as far as dimensions go, it's all loopy, it's all weird, but I love it.
That was one of the conversations that got me so excited. I don't know if you had an opportunity. I sent you a little clip of me and my friend Pamela. I don't know if you ended up
Yes,
watching it or
love
not.
Pamela.
But so that was during the portion where we both got the healing, and so so to set it up for your listeners, my friend Pamela Erlin and I were in a BQH session, a Beyond Quantum Healing session. We were the clients, meaning both of us together as a team laid down in a little bed. And then we had a friend, actually sisters, my friends Donna and Diana were the practitioners. There was a couple other people in the room witnessing. So they did the Beyond Quantum Healing process while we were laying there. We had an intention. The intention was very simple. We just wanted to connect with Dolores Cannon. We didn't have any questions. We didn't have nothing. We both just, I remember where we were at this event. I remember just eating a taco. It was lunchtime between some other things. It was kind of a gathering of women in a spiritual retreat, shall we say. And I'm just sitting here eating a taco. And I was just thinking, I think really Dolores would like to be able to give voice. I think she really wants to talk to us. I was just sort of like looking up in the sky, and Pamela slides over next to me. She just walked into the room and she leans into my ear. She goes, I think Dolores really wants to talk to us. I mean, she basically voiced my thought, right? And I'm like, yeah. And we looked at our watch and said, well, we got time. And we went and found a room and we laid down together. And in the session, when we talked to Dolores, Dolores was talking through Pamela, but talking to me. And she was saying, I know, Candace, you wanted to experience me in this way. You wanted to speak for me in this way. I just really wanted to understand where she was, what was going on, what life was for her now outside of the physical, what she was doing, some other things like that. And she was talking about healing and life and energy. And what she showed us was, now I'm going back to what you were saying about the black hole. She was showing us that in every single cell of our body, the nucleus of the cell, of every cell in our body, has a tiny little black hole in it like that. And she was having me take my consciousness to just a single cell in my body and looking at the internal part of it. And I was using the words that I could at the time. And I could see the energy swooshing through it. And there's an effect called the Venturi effect. It's when wind passes through small objects. If you've ever gone through there's a long hallway in a building somewhere, and the wind, the air is rushing through it. It's because when you take a compressed space between two bigger places, you whoosh through it. It's also a flight term in aviation. And with horses, it has to do with gates. And that's a joke, but it's also true. You put two gates by a horse and want to run right through it. Anyway, so I'm talking about that. And I'm standing in front, and she tells me to go into that. She's like, take your consciousness and put it in that. And that's when my body started to do the thing, and I practically levitated. And what was so outstanding about all of this is neither one of us asked for it, but both Pamela and I, our lives changed after that session in so many ways. She actually had been given she had a terminal illness. She was given a certain amount of time left to live. She hadn't even told us that at the time. That's no longer real. And everything in my world that I was experiencing, once again, in my body, which I seem to do in chapters of challenges, never anything so serious like what Pamela was facing. But everything changed after that. And it was about going into that thing where you go into the other side, and the energy and the thing shifts. And it also has to do with, and I know you were talking about this when I was listening to you talk about this, the gamma brainwave state. That's what was happening to our brainwaves as we were going in there. Pamela actually had electrodes on her head that were proving on a readout about the coherence in her brainwaves as this was happening. Whoa. And since we were in trance together, our brainwaves were in training. The
Yep.
we got together like this, my body was just, it was my femurs. I slowed down that clip because my femurs were doing like this. They looked like they were rubber. My butt, but when I came out of it, I'm telling you, it was the most outrageously great feeling in the world. For the next 6 weeks, I only slept like 2 or 3 hours a night. I had boundless energy. I felt like I was 15 years old. It took about 6 weeks for me to come down off that high, but I wrote it for a long time. And Dolores, and she's here now, I can hear it in her head. That was right before COVID. And she said, "You're going to need this energy." And I did, for a lot of reasons, including bringing my father into my home during that time. All of this happened in late fall, right before, in 2019, right before COVID.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's like it's
It's all
coherent.
connected, though. All the things you're talking about, that whole and the gamma and the
Yeah,
this side
exactly.
and that side. And, yeah.
It's all coherence. You know, if you ever see those little
Exactly.
clocks, like those little ticking clocks, like I don't know what the hell they're called.
Metronomes.
Yeah, the
Metronomes.
metronomes. And you put like 100 of them, and within, you know, a minute or two, they'll all sync up. And it's like
Piano stores. Piano store, too. You go into a piano store?
oh, and all
Pluck.
the chords will synchronize.
Yeah, go pluck middle C in the middle of a piano store and then go check all the pianos.
See, and that's the beautiful thing about all this, is because we have that in us. Like that
Yes.
is what we are. We
Yes.
are, there is nothing outside of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Right.
And
Right.
in order to get in tune to the energy level that you want to get into, you have to find something. And this is why they say you got to watch what you think about, watch who you hang out with, watch what you watch on TV and all this other stuff. Because essentially what your mind and your body and your entire energy field is doing is it's synchronizing to try and find that same level of coherence as it is with every thought and person and conversation that you hear. And so whenever people are just constantly talking, like for some reason, depression is like a cool thing to have nowadays. I'm like, why are you like wanting to have anxiety and depression? Why would you ever want that? Like, it's a cool thing. I'm like, dude, there's this one song, I cannot stand it. And I'm sure everybody else has heard this song too, but it's a remake of another song. And it says anxiety. I can't remember exactly how it goes. It's called Anxiety. I think it's by like Doja Cat or one of those people. And I'm like, why is this song popular? Why are we popularizing anxiety and depression? This should not be a thing, because coherence is a thing. And I've, you know, how many people have said, dude, I don't watch horror movies because then it's almost like inviting that into your life. You're doing more than inviting it into your life. You are essentially cohering, or what's the word?
Co-creating.
Well, it's coherence, but essentially you're calling in that energy
Yes,
into your
exactly.
existence.
Yeah.
And so it's very important. That's why people get obsessed with pornography and stuff like that. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're always obsessed with pornography, take a week off from it. Like literally, you just need a week, maybe 2 weeks. Don't watch it. Stay away from it, because once you do it one time, your body has created that coherence type of energy field with it. To now you're always thinking about it. You're always attracted to it. And so, you know, if you want bad shit to stop happening to you, you know, maybe stop thinking about it, for one, and for two, stop reading about it, watching videos on it, having conversations about it. You know, and it's not necessarily that you're avoiding it. It's just understanding that you are a frequency machine. And, you know, the less you kind of come in contact with it, the less it'll come into your life.
It's funny that you talk about that anxiety. I think there's a weird thing that's happened in the last decade or so, or maybe especially since COVID and all of those crummy things that happen, or good things in some ways that you might think about it in 2020. It's like this victim status. It's like a currency. It's like I don't know. I mean, it's harder for my generation to understand that. You know, I'm more oppressed than you are. I've had it worse off than you have, or whatever. I mean, that's gotten really disgusting in our world. I think there's some of that that's going on. So I think, and then once once that's just perpetuated too, and that sort of self-help stuff can get ugly too, which is why people who do regression work and past life regressions, like I know you do too, it sort of stops the talk therapy model of, well, it's Wednesday and here you are again talking about your terrible childhood, and you do it every week or whatever. It's like, you've got to get away from that. You've just got to, sure, there's a point where you want to get some of it out, but when you just go back in it, there's literal loops in your brain. There's neural pathways in your brain. That's what you're talking about. Get away from it. Every time you go there, you revisit it and you make that neural pathway stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's why going into meditations or trance like this, sometimes that can just take you from this just, I'm going to do today what I did yesterday kind of lifestyle way. And suddenly some people just go off just a little bit, like, into the world where there's not those glass bottles, or some people like actually take a hard turn. And those are the people I think that sit up after a session and show what we call miraculous healings, which if you think about it, it's just Dolores Cannon, even years ago when I first got this from studying her and thinking about her work and speaking with her in my dreams, she calls them version states of your body. And she says, you can think about it this way. She goes, you move through bodies, actual physical bodies, throughout your day. She goes, let's just play a little game. Let's say you're a person who has a doctor's appointment and you're facing either an illness or a potentially, awful, serious illness. So when you first wake up in the morning, your body's in one state. As soon as your mind thinks, oh, today I have to go to the doctor and I'm gonna something about the tests or whatever, your body switches state. Right then and there, your emotions, your body, you are in a different physical body. But then you get up and you take a shower. Maybe you're singing a song in the shower and you're not thinking about it directly at that moment. You're kind of in another realm. You're in a different body. Then you get into the car and then you're going, oh my God, I'm going again. And then you're in another body. And then but you kind of, again, maybe you're singing to the radio or thinking about something else. You're in another body. You are in a different body over and over and over again. And wasn't it, I think it was Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was the dude who had a really serious illness. And I believe he's the one who, he was told he only had X months to live because he had a serious illness, and he locked himself up. This was decades ago. Locked himself up in a hotel room and did nothing but watch funny movies, Elvis and Costello, and some of the old comedies. And he did nothing but watch comedies and laugh for days and weeks on end. Came out of it, no longer was ill.
Yeah, that makes total sense. If all we are is just energy, frequency, and vibration, if that's all everything is, then nothing is essentially materialistically physical as we know it. That everything has its own vibrational state. And if you can change your own internal vibrational state, upon hearing some bad news or something like that. See, this is where people get caught up. And this is part of the healthcare scam, in my opinion, is that they'll say, well, you have this kind of cancer. Now you have to go through all of the different radiation and take all the different chemicals and pills and everything like that, further cementing your identity with that cancer now. And now you know that your days are numbered. I mean, they told you only have a couple of months to live. And so now you're accepting that. And that's part of that contract stuff that we were talking about. So if you're accepting it and you're getting multiple different layers of information that is further identifying you with that state, then you're only going to begin to manifest it a little bit more. However, if you don't accept that state and you're like, nope, it's not, maybe it seems delusional to the muggle out there. But If you say then, well, I don't identify as that, and I'm going to do everything that I can to like remove myself from this identity as humanly possible. And a lot of times, just like how you were saying, like you can bring yourself back to your memories of your childhood, back to whenever you were healthy and you were fit and you had energy and you didn't have any kind of sickness. I mean, I don't know about you. Whenever I was a kid, if I got sick, it was maybe a day and I knocked it out because we were always outside in the sunlight, always playing, always laughing, always good vibes all the time. And I mean, of course, with the friends, I mean, if you're getting punished by your parents, that's a different story, but like you want to remember the good times and you're essentially inviting that what we on the linear time scale seem as like old energy or ancient energy. It's like, no, you can bring yourself right there. And the crazy thing about all of this, and I was just thinking about this, whenever you can transport yourself, whatever you identify as, maybe that's the soul or just the consciousness or the awareness of consciousness, whatever it is, you can transport yourself to certain places within meditation, past life regressions, any kind of trance state. And that's what you are doing in that moment. Wherever you are, you know, whether it's a grief thought or a regret or anything like that, you're taking yourself literally, not figuratively, not hypothetically. You are actually going there in that moment and you're manifesting from that place. Yep. And this is why I think that, you know, kind of like what you were talking about, I think that we are literally going there and why we don't necessarily remember where we came from in the first place. Because we don't necessarily identify with that anymore. Or maybe it was just a completely different track of thinking that we're not even, you know, aligned with anymore. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. Dolores Cannon used to say, because it was, if you say you come from source, it would come up every once in a while. It still comes up in sessions every once in a while too. And people talk about this idea of going or wanting to visit source or wanting to visit, you know, creation, the creation potential itself that brought them to this world. And Dolores used to say, well, I don't like to take people there very often because when they get there, they just don't do anything else. They just want to stay there. You know, to revisit though what you're saying about this illness thing, you know, I had to navigate caring for my parents through some stuff where I needed to follow my heart and understanding of energy like you, but also the practical implications. And I found there was at least a way to communicate either to your own conscious mind or to the people around you. So example, one of the things that we would say about my dad towards the end, and he overcame this. I don't know if we ever talked about this or not, but my dad overcame being on oxygen 24/7 for a year and a half to setting it down till the rest of his life.
Whoa.
But so the way I would talk about it when I had to be at a medical thing with him, it would be the doctors have diagnosed my father with COPD. I would never in a million years say my dad has COPD, or I wouldn't let him say it either. Right. But to navigate and go in the world, you can, you know, well, I've been told that XYZ, you know, that kind of a thing. But it can shift it just in a moment. That's what's so great about doing the sessions, but it doesn't always have to be. It doesn't always have to be a session. Can I tell you about an incredible healing story that had to do about an allergy?
Please.
So this was a number of years ago. There was a young woman who, before COVID, before Daddy lived out here, sometimes she would drive him out here for dinner. I would go into town every day, but sometimes she would bring him back out to the farm in the evenings for dinner. So she was there and we were sitting at the kitchen sink doing dishes. And I have animals in the house and I have cats. And she actually said, you know, I'm allergic to cats. And I'm like, really? I said, you know, we have a number of cats here. She goes, I know, but you don't have carpets and, you know, you keep the house clean and I'm pretty good. But no, I'm severely allergic to cats and I love them so much. And I said, wow, you know, I said in my work with BQH and QHHT, I've learned that a lot of times allergies it's not only a past life thing. It can come from a fear, a real fear, or something that either happened in a past life, but it could have happened in this life. And I'm just chatting away, and I go, like maybe you were a little kid or something, and got really scared, and there was a cat around, and then I even say this, and it just came out of nowhere, and I'm like maybe it was Halloween or something, and she practically like threw the dinner plate in the sink, and she looked at me, and she goes, "Oh my God, I just remembered something," and she tells me the story, and the story is she's 3 or 4. It's one of her earliest memories. A cousin takes her down the street during Halloween time. It's during the day, but they go into a garage. The cousin's like a teenager age. The garage is being turned into, how kids do. It's going to be a thing. Everything's scary. They've got decorated, and they have this motorized something or other. They make a coffin out of a cardboard box or something, and they make a thing to where the door opens, the coffin sits up, and a big thing comes, dummy comes up out of the coffin and does this and is scary and all that. Well, the kid's friend is showing the other friend how this is going to work with this little kid, this little girl right next. And all of that happens with a cat by her leg. She has this huge trauma. She has practically forgotten this. It all comes rushing back. She's actually sitting down at my kitchen table, like in tears, remembering this trauma. Never has an allergy that day forward.
Whoa.
No session needed, no nothing. She was because when we come into this world, we take our energy and we agree to embody this dense physical matter. And sometimes it's just our body. Our body has taken that trauma and integrate it often, I don't know if you've heard this before, but more and more I understand this, into the fascia. The fascia of our entire body took that story, integrated it into the fibers of the fascia. But when this realization came, and then she was able to, in a moment, understand it as an adult and release it and no longer have the issue at all. Now, that can happen in a session with a longer process and with some other things like that. But this is happening just standing, just standing at a kitchen sink.
Unreal. Yeah, and that's
Isn't that crazy?
Well, what they say is, this whole awakening process, you're not awakening to something new. It is a remembering. A lot of it is all about just remembering. And that might seem silly to somebody who doesn't necessarily understand the entirety of what that means. But this kind of goes back to the whole coherence kind of thing. Whenever something vibes right or feels right or sounds right, and it ripples all the way throughout your body to where it feels like truth from head to toe and out to your fingertips and out to the tips of your toes and everything. I don't know. Is there any other way to prove that it's real or that it's true or that it's vibrating right or whatever than whenever you can literally feel it manifest? You're literally feeling truth manifest throughout your entire being, and that is how I identify truth. And that's why I love all of the different, esoteric modalities, because all esotericism is just like, it is symbolism it's encoded symbolism is really what it is. And
it is.
And I always like to break it down in the easiest possible way. Whenever you're driving down the road and you see the golden arches of McDonald's, do you only think about Ronald McDonald, or do you only think about a giant M, or do you only think about red and yellow with white letters? No, you're thinking about the chicken McNuggets, maybe a McFlurry, maybe some French fries, whatever it is that you often associate with seeing that sign. It's encoded into that symbol. And that's all of this is. And a lot of it is just opening a door. And as soon as not even opening a door, if you see this door of something in your mind, you see it, it will instantly unlock it and fling that door wide open into where you'll have what a lot of people nowadays say a download comes in. Right. Yeah, and it's a remembering of something. And then that information downloads into your body, pours into your body, and it resonates throughout your entire being. that is how you can discern truth from falsity, I believe.
After I had this dream that I changed timelines, I acted upon it the next day, and a variety of things happened. And I happened to learn about a reflexologist that lives in the little town just north of me, 20 minutes. I'm gonna. How crazy is this? This woman is 100 years old. She's going to be 101 on this Sunday.
Wow.
She goes to visit her son in the nursing home because she's long out. Anyway, I end up there, and I wait till about my third visit. But she goes, well, I never asked, how did you found me? I said, it started with a dream. And then all of a sudden, she just went back like this. She goes, I'm covered in goosebumps. Why am I covered in goosebumps? What do you mean a dream? I mean, the look on her face, it was really interesting. I said, I think that's because that's truth that's going through there. And I believe I'm just reconnecting with you. And I'm needing what you. This woman works full time. She's going to be 101 on Sunday. She works Monday to Friday full time. And she's like, I don't know why God has given me this energy. I'm like, you are sitting in the vibration of healing these other people. You're bathing in the energy of healing. No wonder you are feeling as well as you are. She wasn't hearing. She goes, I've never met anyone like you. She says, everyone else just wants me to rub their feet, make them feel better, but you want to talk about all this stuff. And now she's talking to me about stuff. And she's telling me stuff. She goes, and she sort of looks at me like to see whether or not I'm going to listen to her. And she'll talk about God in different ways and seeing the whole body and the foot and the hand and how it's connected. And she looks at me, she goes, I've never been able to talk to anybody like this before. I said, well, that's one of the reasons I'm here, maybe so that you can say these things and that I can have assistance with some of my energy body by some of your skill in my feet.
That is unreal. First of all, being that old and then going to go visit your son in a nursing home, that is, whoo. Look, nobody wants to be alive to see their kids die, but I hope that I'm alive to see my kids go in a nursing home. Like, that sounds like best case scenario. I mean, hopefully they won't have to go in a nursing home because I'll be able to, but 101 years old, how much are you really going to be helping around the house? I don't know, but either way, like, that is so amazing. And just the aspect of death in general, why I think that most people don't remember past lives or how they died in a past life. Maybe it'll, manifest as a birthmark or a weird phobia that they now have in this lifetime. But for the most part, I just feel like, and I personally know this through, going through past life regressions myself and reading a bunch of different past life regressions and near-death experiences, is that it is such an easy transition that it's not like, it's never really a big deal in the giant scheme of things. Like, whenever you go from being manifested into a physical human form and then you're not, it's not like a crazy thing, like to be able to transition to the other side, because you're still there. You're still you. You didn't go anywhere, know, and that's just a crazy thing that just goes on. And I think that, a lot of people, they make decisions in their lives based upon the fear of death. Well, I don't want to live with regrets, or I don't want to make a big jump like that because, it's too big a risk or whatever it is. And it's always this fear of death. But I think that is ultimately just a spell that is cast over almost everybody. The fear of death is ultimately just a giant spell that is, for some reason, just believed in. And that's because people identify with their body. And whenever of course, your body's going to die, but you can't.
Can I share with you how my brother died? It was tragic. He was only 26, perfectly healthy. We had communication afterwards, and he showed me, and it makes so much sense, and it matches so much of what I've learned doing past life regressions and quantum healing for all these years. So he was actually moving a motorcycle that he no longer wished to ride. He was moving it from one place to another. He was trying to sell it. His fiance was following him in a car. So he was ahead, and a 19-year-old, one-eyed drag racing fool with 9 speeding tickets and reckless driving tickets in his glove box crossed 3 lanes of traffic at a high rate of speed, took my brother out. He ended up rolling into the gutter, and that was that. But my brother showed me what happened. So it's the aftermath. It's the people who are left. We are the ones who go through the really hard stuff. My brother showed me what happened, and this plays out over and over again in regressions. The body continued driving the motorcycle, but about a block and a half before, when he went through an intersection, his spirit just went up and it turned north, and it was gone. It was just his physical body that went the next block and a half on that motorcycle. He felt absolutely no pain, no anything. All of the pain, all of the repercussions, all that was for us. That was for us and our learning. It's one of the reasons I do what I'm doing now, because of how much it affected my life, etc. His fiance, I mean, imagine that. She was behind him. She got to see the whole thing. She was getting ready to marry this guy, right? Her whole life changed. Everything changed in everyone. The dude who did it, all of the things. But I've heard it said over and over again. It's just like getting up and sitting from one chair to the other. The actual death itself, and even if the body is, we learn this in regressions, if you're tied to the stake, or you're being burned to death, and they're screaming and flailing, and obvious agony happening in the body, that your soul is already past that. This is something else that's happening. And I actually had an experience when my brother wasn't even born yet. So I was something along the age of 12 months old. I was sitting on a beach in Okinawa with my father. Beautiful white beach, the waves coming up. We were just on the edge of the beach, but a rogue wave came up that was a little bigger than the rest. And it washed up this giant, like 4 foot, 5 foot long tentacle man o' war jellyfish on top of me and my dad. And the tentacles went across my body from my shoulder, across my torso, all the way down to my hip. I'm like a year old. I don't know. You can touch this much of a Portuguese man o' war and be screaming like a baby as an adult. The venom, the poison is so painful. I shot out of my body. Instantly, but I have a memory of it. And I have a memory of watching my father carry me and go do what he did to assist me. And over the years, I've asked about this and talked about this too. And before I knew about this kind of work and what I was doing and leaving the body and out of body experiences and astral projection and all that, I thought I had made a memory of my parents telling me about it, but it was way too specific. And I remembered more than they did. And I saw my treatment being like from up in the treatment room, up in the corner, right down. I'm watching them treat my body. That was my memory. But I didn't really understand any of that till doing this work. So even as a small child who is going through that severe trauma, and I had scars on my body all the way up into my 30s. They kept shrinking like this. I finally don't have any, but I had scars my whole life from that event, where my skin was burned so terribly. Even then, your spirit can protect itself by removing it from the body. And then your body, then again, too, that's a whole nother discussion. I don't know if you've gotten involved with this with some of your past life regression, but the physical body itself has goals, aspirations, and wants to ascend in a way, wants to expand and learn in a way too. The physical thing that you are has some of its own goals, and you come together with your spirit in a co-creative life event and agreed to be partners in this world. And so much about self-healing can come from that understanding that this body, I used to be mad at my body when it would hurt or not work. You gotta respect your body, and you gotta think of it as your partner.
That is so crazy. You know, I've came to some very strange conclusions in my own life leading up to that very thing that you just said. I've said in you know, really not that long ago that is it really that strange to believe that we are the spirit guides to our, you know, our human body, that essentially our body is an entity in and of itself, and that we as the soul or the guide or the spirit or whatever is essentially helping this machine, helping this meat suit evolve in a certain sense. Like it does make a lot of sense. And the beautiful thing about that is that if you can kind of put yourself in that frame of mind, you're now no longer attached to any of the body's fears or guilts or thoughts, even for that matter, because now you're able, and this is where it gets even crazier. So if you're the one, the real you, call it the higher self, the true self, whatever it is, and you're just inside of this body, otherwise known as a temple, then this temple that you're encompassing, you're now working in union with, and every thought that you have, every memory that you have, no matter what you experience, that is something that the human version of quote unquote you is experiencing. But you, the real you, the higher self, the true self version of you, doesn't necessarily have to identify with what your human is going through. I believe that it's up to us to give the human a more, I don't know, delightful, understanding, awakened version of experience that it otherwise wouldn't have if it wasn't for the higher self or the source version of ourselves encompassing in it. Like, as weird as that may sound, I think that's why we're here. We're here to, I'm going to get real crazy. I think that the reason why we're here is to help the human race evolve. I said it. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think it's that crazy. What are your thoughts on it?
I absolutely believe that's true. And I don't know if I've ever shared this thought with you before, but what we're doing is so far out there. You might have heard this before. You might have heard that we live on this really hard planet, you know, that this is a hard existence to choose and all of that. But one of my favorite things to think about, and this comes through communicating with Dolores after her death, because I really feel like part of her energy remains right between the physical and the non-physical. I think she's still very interested. She understands that her legacy is helping humanity. But a great part of her energy, I do believe, is out having new experiences. But one of the things that has blown my mind is the idea. So, I mean, you have to sort of contextualize it this way, but if you can imagine Dolores being like right in the veil, you know, we're on this side, you know, that's on that side. So, you know how we're often talking about believing or imagining or talking about all of that kind of life and consciousness that happens on that side of the veil, and some people are like, I don't believe in that. Again, we're going back to the belief systems. But one of the craziest things I ever heard her come and tell me after her death in this after death communication is, she says, you know, there are entities on that side of the veil that don't believe that it's possible for consciousness to embody physicality. They don't believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yes, we are absolutely here to take this thing that even, and there's way more non-physical life than physical, way more. Physical life is a very tiny, my understanding anyway, is a very tiny portion of what reality is, very tiny. And I think that we have taken on this challenge of, let's see what we can do with that. Let's see how much we can do with that. And I think it brings us all the way back to some of the stuff we talked to at the very, very beginning of our talk, which is maybe if we do that well enough, we will remember where we came from. We will begin to remember who we are, what our mission is, and what we're actually connected to.
Yes, bridging the microcosm to the macrocosm. Essentially, like if anybody's ever seen, I mean, of course, most people on this show have seen a tarot card or two, but the magician is said to be the conduit between heaven and earth, which, you know, heaven's not up there, it's everywhere really, and earth is kind of just like the I don't know, the what is the term? The farthest emanation from the pure source of whatever God is, I guess. And so if that's the case, then you're essentially bridging the two gaps. You're bridging the microcosm and the macrocosm and letting them know that they're not separate or you know, different individual entities or different individual places or anything like that. And you're allowing them to condense into the one thing. And maybe that is, maybe whenever, you know, maybe if we send a prayer, like oftentimes I'm pretty specific about who I am trying to connect with via meditation or prayer, or, you know, whenever I'm trying to get a message through tarot or any other form of divination. Maybe whenever we say, all right, I want to get a message straight from Dolores Cannon, which I just did with this tarot card, which we'll get to. But I believe that whenever we say, all right, I want Dolores Cannon to come in here, and you just sit there and allow the energy to come in, and then essentially you're trying to bridge the resonance between the energy coming in and your energy and allowing that to cohere all at one time, right? And I believe that that's probably how channeling is done. But
It is exactly, I think.
yeah, it makes the most sense. And so I believe that whenever you say that, I want energy, Dolores to come in or whoever, you're now like, it's almost like Dolores maybe hears it from the other side in the same way that, like, whenever you get a phone call and you know exactly who it's going to be, like in that kind of way. You know, whenever you get a random thought of somebody, it's usually because maybe that person is thinking about you, or whatever the case may be. I think that it's happening on both sides.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and that's how we're able to receive messages from the other side, and maybe that's how the other side receives messages from us.
Absolutely. And I believe Dolores is one of the easiest people to contact. I don't care if you're a practitioner or not. If you enjoy her energy in any way, just try talking to her. Just have a pretend conversation. You don't have to tell anybody about it. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to record it or anything. I mean, even when we were first talking, communicating after she passed, even though I'd been doing this work for 6 years when she passed, and I still would go, is that really, or am I just making this up? we all do this. But then I started really paying attention, and she would use words or even referenced things that I didn't know what they were. She would use some words, some country Arkansas words that I didn't know. And the one that really got me that I'd never heard before, you might have, because you're a little further south than I am. You might have heard this before. She actually talked about alcohol being some kind of jungle juice. She called it, she used the term jungle juice. All of a sudden she said something about jungle juice. I was like, what is jungle juice? I had to look it up. and different terms. This morning, somebody who had a visitation from her said the very first thing she said was, you need to stop listening to the riffraff. I said, that sounds exactly like Dolores. That is a word she would use. Another thing that she would tell me, she would reference, and still does occasionally, TV shows from the 60s and 70s. She actually said something to me a couple times about Matlock. I had to go look up what Matlock was. I wasn't quite sure. And while I'm even looking it up, I heard her say, I always thought he was really cute. And she's talking about Andy Griffith.
Oh, wow.
Which of course makes sense. That was in her day. And he was, he was a little country, a little Southern or whatever. She kind of had a crush on him. Where did that come from? This is the thing. She's always said it's as easy as picking up a telephone. And then she'll say, and I don't have to answer it.
Oh, yeah.
She does.
As far
I
as
don't have to answer. I don't have to talk to you.
yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know you in other terms.
Yeah, I might and I might not, and it's like, and some people can hear some things, like some people can hear small talk or small things, and then other people can hear more meaty conversations. And it depends again on all the things we've talked about, the resonance, and what
Yep.
you're open to.
Yeah, it's
What you're
what's interesting, and I don't know if everybody else knows it this way, but jungle juice, at least where I come from, is it's kind of like if you've ever heard of the term like bush meat or street meat. It's like don't ask what the ingredients are in a hot dog kind of thing. It's just know that it's meat, right? And jungle juice, at least where I come from, is an amalgamation of just everything you had in your parents' cabinet, and then you throw a little Kool-Aid or something in there to kind of set off the taste. But like, that's what it was always to me. So maybe it's just like, I mean, look, it's a bunch of things. Don't believe everything kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. She would talk about it in events. This is in her real life, when she would talk about conferences and things like that. She was like, yeah, you can go into the restaurant and you can even go to the bar and have a drink. She would always say, if you like that sort of thing, she stayed away from that. She did not partake.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when we were out in Vegas, I got a couple of drinks. That was my first time drinking in, I don't even know, a year or two. I don't really care to drink. I guess it's fun every so often, but even that night I was like, I'd rather not be drunk right now, actually.
Yeah. And this is why, if it used to be in my day, the place to go for entertainment in the evenings were bars and stuff like that. And, a whole lot of people have gotten out of that. Of course, a lot of people have taken themselves into the basement and completely disconnected too, which is also not great and not good. We need more and better places to connect that don't involve things like that, like alcohol and whatever.
Yeah,
but,
it's like for some reason that's like the only way to get a social gathering going. Like I know people that won't show up to weddings if there's not an open bar. I'm like, that's why you're going? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's a social lubricant. There's some people simply, and look, I've had enough people come to see me in sessions who have issues with addiction and overindulgence or whatever, and I've done a lot of asking of questions about alcohol in sessions, and some of the answers were surprising, especially in the early years. And some of the early or surface effects of alcohol that remove inhibitions, it's actually some of the relaxation and the inhibition releasing that meditation gives, and it's actually at its core, it's actually a yearning for the divine in a way.
Yes.
So it people listening and they think you're crazy. Alcohol is that, but see, it makes some, it takes away some tightness. It takes away inhibition, and it's actually a desire for a connection. Of course, it ultimately becomes quite empty and dangerous in a lot of different ways when it's overdone. But
right.
That's what some of the impetus is for people who drink.
That's what I hear. And it's not even just drinking. I mean, pill problems, any kind of drug problems, whatever. It could even be like people that are addicted to sex, whatever that is, that it brings you to a place of comfort and no anxiety. And, it gives you a way to escape the depression or whatever it is. Going to that place, whether it is sex or drugs or alcohol or whatever, it's the same reason why some people love music more than other people, because the music will set them into a place where it's like, oh man, this is just where I want to be. And it's like, it's not talking about where you're physically at. It's where your consciousness or your energy goes that allows you to put yourself at that rest. And I think that, whenever people do go out and they, maybe it's like a social gathering where everybody's drinking, I think that so many people out there have so many masks that they put on for everybody else that they don't allow their true selves to really come out. And only whenever they have that drink or that hit of that joint or whatever the case may be, that they allow their borders and their walls to come down to allow their truer selves to come out. And maybe it's not even just their truer selves. It could just be something that's like inside that's jumping around. I want to get out, but I can't. And for one reason or another, you feel like you have to almost hide your own true self. And that's why, like, you know, if you ever start dating somebody in the beginning, it is amazing. They're the best version of themselves. They're opening up. They're at their happy core and they're expressing themselves to you. And then for some reason, they just forget what that feeling is. And then they start putting up walls and they start putting up all these barriers. And why are you an asshole now? You never used to be an asshole kind of situation. And it's like, for some reason, it's just like, that's where people just go back to. It's like the automatic starting point. You know, it's strange.
Yeah. You know, tell me if I'm going too far sideways on our conversation, but you've reminded me of something I wanted to ask you. I think, and I meant to write it down, but we got together so quickly this afternoon, I didn't have a chance to do that. I think it was a dude who was experimenting with some DMT and a laser. Do you know about this?
Danny Goler, yes.
And with the symbols, and then some people would get together and they would see the same symbols. They would see that language.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming through in some sessions, and it's coming through in dreams. I actually had a dream a few months ago in the middle. Well, I woke up. I'd only been asleep for a little while, and I sat up and I just watched all of these symbols in the room, you know, and they were lit up with light, and I was absolutely awake, and I just laid there and looked at them for the longest time, because usually when you have these crazy things happen, at least for me anyway, they tend to be short-lived. And I watched that symbol for those symbols just hanging there for the longest time. What do you make of all of that?
You know, I've thought a great deal about this, and I personally have experienced a version of that as well. I tried DMT one time, or I tried it twice in one night, but the first time was the fun time. The second time was the not fun time. The second time was like a whole on nightmare. I want to forget about it, but no, I can't forget about it. It's like imprinted into me. But anyway, the first one is like I was out floating in the universe, and I saw what appeared to be like Saturn. Because I could tell that it was like the floating rings outside of the planet, right? But the rings themselves weren't made up of space junk or rocks or whatever that have gathered. It was more of like a fluid, almost like a plasma that was floating all the way around the planet, spinning like, you know, in Saturn. And inside of those plasma rings or whatever that's floating around Saturn, I saw this gold ball just appear. It was just like sitting in there, almost like a ball that's floating on top of the surface of some water, right? And so I was like, and in the trip, I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, I wonder what that feels like. And as soon as I had that thought, it went from being so far away in Saturn's rings to in my, you know, etheric hands or what have you, right? And I'm holding this, and it feels like a little bit heavier than like a softball. And it was like this gold ball, and it had all these inscriptions all the way around it, like all these symbols. And I was like, what is that? I was like, what is that? And I could feel like it was like engraved into this pure gold ball, right? And I've done a great deal of thinking about it, and I've talked to Danny Goler about it as well. And I was
got to talk to him. Cool.
Oh yeah, a couple of times. Yeah. I got his phone number. We chat from time to time. But anyway, so I told him about that, and he was like, wow, yeah, might be the same thing. And so my understanding of symbolism in general is that anytime you look at a symbol, it is unlocking something within your subconscious mind to allow your conscious mind to eventually grasp the concept of it. Especially if it's like a foreign symbol or something like that. That being said, I think that is how memory is imprinted into consciousness. That maybe that is how we go back to remembering what we once experienced at a time. Now, maybe it's not us. Maybe it's just that's the code of reality, right? Because if you think about
That's
codes,
that's where my mind goes. Yeah.
you think about like coding on a computer, like
Yeah.
you're building a program in your computer to where you don't necessarily have to look it up on the computer and use internet or anything like that anymore, because that coding is now imprinted onto your computer. Maybe you want to call it an app, but before it's an app that you just, touch on your phone, it's a bunch of little codes that your screen or your computer or your phone is remembering so that you can instantly go right back there. And I think that whenever people are, they smoke a little DMT, they shine a laser through some kind of diffracted glass onto a wall, and it shows the coding or the symbols. I think that that's just how this reality is maintained, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But why are we being shown it, or why are we seeing it? Can we manipulate it? Are we that close to it, or is this like artifacts from from a different perspective? Because I just really wonder, throughout the ages, have other humans seen this too, or is this part of what we're only able to see now because we are, ascending, hopefully?
Well, and what you hear is, especially through like some of the Chinese writing and the Hebrew writing, and I think there's a Japanese writing as well, that they say that the alphabets were not created, that they were discovered.
Wow.
And so if you look, especially even at the Hebrew alphabet, in the way that it starts at Aleph, I think is A, and then it goes all the way to the end of the alphabet, it's literally the sounds that maybe the first humans would have made. It's like encoded magically. And and they say that, a lot of these like a lot of the letters in the alphabet and everything, it was almost discovered through meditation or through prayer or discovered through plant medicine or what have you. And so, but where does that come from? How does that exist apart from the human mind?
Right.
Maybe that's just part of the coding that allows this reality to exist in the first place. And maybe the reason why we're able to see it is because I think a lot of people are out here having anxiety. They're having depression. They don't know what life is all about. Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What do I believe in? And it's almost like, calm down. Like this is really all it is. Like, this is all it is. Right. Like, and so don't get caught up in the mundane minutia of life, because it's so much more than you're whittling it out to be in the first place. And I think that the same could be said for the orbs that people are seeing up in the sky as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Once, when I was a young mother, it was a Saturday morning, and I was making pancakes with my daughter, and we had a screen door that was sitting wide open, and this ball of light, this golden ball of light. So both the orbs and your golden ball now make me think about this memory. I love it when there's witnesses, Jonathan. I love it when other people see or have the experience with me, because so very often it's just me, and then I end up telling people and sound a little wacko. But my whole family saw this, especially my daughter. It just floated in, and we were in the middle of making pancakes. She was standing on a chair. She was measuring salt to put in the pancakes, and the ball came over to her hand and just sort of like touched her hand, and then just floated out the room. And we're just like, and then my daughter looks at me. She's like maybe 8. I don't know, something like that. I don't remember the year. I should. And she said, "Mama, what was that?" And I mean, I, of course, had no idea, but I needed to be a mother at the time. And, I said, maybe it was an angel. I'm trying to, of course, make it palatable and positive and all of that. It was still so beautiful. And it was a beautiful morning. Everything about the morning was good. The energy of the family was good. The house was calm and peaceful. We were doing something wonderful. It was this just wonderful, I don't know why this is making me. I think maybe it's a clue now, though.
Yeah.
maybe this is a clue because it's making me think about one of the first people I ever did a past life regression on was my daughter. I just learned Dolores Cannon's session or method. And right before the session, I'm pretending I don't know her. And I'm like, do you have any questions? And she actually freaking surprises the hell out of me. So this is 2008, not long after I took the class. And she actually says, yeah, why do I always have these thoughts that I'm going to die young? She's maybe, I don't know, well, 2008, what would that make her? She's like, I don't know, 15, 14, something like that. No, she's a little older. She's maybe 50, she's 15 or so. And she never voiced that fear to me. But she happened to, we do this session. She has a past life where she's a young girl. It's a terrible traumatic scene. She's being chased by a man. She's wearing a nightgown. She's being chased out of a house. He chases her into the field, has his way, and then kills her. It's one of those things. And then we get to the higher self, and the higher self says, the reason that you have felt that is this was your most previous past life. And you had a pattern of those. You had a string of those for learning and for understanding childhood in a certain sort of way. But you are here to break that pattern. And you absolutely are not going to die young. You're absolutely going to live to adulthood. You absolutely are going to have children. And her whole life changed after that. Her whole life changed. She became more confident. She's a mother now with 3 beautiful children in a completely different world. An afternoon of doing a past life regression just absolutely changed everything. And I learned something I never knew about her, my own firstborn kid. I had all those years. I had no idea she was ruminating on that.
Wow. Yeah. There is, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that whole idea of, your thoughts almost manifesting in, in your real life,
Exactly.
and you almost become attached to that identity. And maybe
Exactly.
it does manifest in life, or it manifests in other ways to where you don't allow yourself to exceed any kind of your own expectations because you know that inevitably you're going to be dying soon anyway. So if you
Right.
can remove that barrier, and now it's like, well, she grew to, be a mother, and, was able to experience and is still able to experience all of reality, and that fear is completely removed. And that's,
Yeah.
I think is, in my opinion, that is one of the most beneficial things that you can get from a past life regression. Like, first of all, I always say this, the past life regression is amazing. Like, it is a full on experience. It's like going to Universal Studios and being in one of those rides. It is just a crazy time, right? But the most beneficial part is whenever you can communicate one-on-one with the higher self, and that pure knowingness comes through. Just
Yeah.
about how people, they write down the questions that they have been wondering their entire lives. They cannot get an answer from. They have no idea what the answer is. Is it going to be this way? Did this happen? Is this going to happen? What is the nature of this, or whatever, right? They have no idea. And then they're all of a sudden they go through the past life, they jump into the higher self, and the higher self's like, yeah, of course. Like why would you even ask me that? Like, you already know this kind of
He
thing.
already knows. He already knows. Haven't you heard that a number of times?
Oh
They
my.
already know that. I don't know. They already know that. Like, oh, okay, just tell them again.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Almost like they don't even want to answer it. Oh, he
Right?
knows already. She knows.
Exactly.
It's like, all right, well, I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Can you tell me?
Right.
You
Yeah,
just go
yeah,
there with it.
exactly. Exactly.
But it's so healing in that way. I think that there are certain things within ourselves that just we prevent ourselves from achieving something that we've always wanted to achieve, and it's usually because of some kind of subconscious underlying thing that may have happened in a past life. Maybe it's something that you just clung on to as a little kid, and now you formed an identity with it, and now that's just who you are.
There are so many of those. There are so many of those. I cannot tell you how many times I have Here, this was a recent one. Let me see. It's just not coming back to me. So there was here it is. So I had a session with a woman, and she had, this lifelong fear and anxiety and wanting to control and all this stuff. And she goes, I think I know what the root cause of that. She knew enough about this work that she says, I think I know the root cause. I've been feeling this anxiety since I was a let's say an 8 or 10 year old kid. And there was another fear thing. It was a babysitter who thought it would be funny to pull a prank on her and kind of give her a fright. It wasn't anything big. It was just jumping out from behind a tree in the dark, but it was enough to make an impression on my 60 some year old clients, mind from all the way back then. She says, I remember this anxiety ever since that moment. And we went through all of her other issues and all of her other stuff. This was somebody who's been working on herself before coming for a session, and she'd made great strides, but there were still a few things that were unclear to her, which is why she was having a session. So I asked the higher self about that, and I said, she has had this lifelong anxiety and this control thing, and she ties it to that experience as a child. Is that the way it worked? And listen to what the higher self says. No, that was not the root of it. It was a good guess, but not the root of it. And listen to what the story was. So she ends up feeling like she is responsible for others and their lives, their actual physical lives. Like, if I don't do this, you may not live anymore. It had to do with her parents or siblings, other people, grandchildren. She just felt personally responsible for their physical life. And she just was trying to figure out where all that came from. The higher self says it was the kitten under the kitchen cabinet. And I'm like, now, I hadn't heard this in the interview. I had no idea what she was talking about. And I'm like, can you tell us what story you're referring to? Yeah, she was about 3 years old. They were living in a rented house. They were not supposed to have any cats in the house. They had a kitten. The landlord said if they caught them with a kitten, they'd kick them out, and that he would take and kill the kitten. And the landlord surprised the mother, the child, and the kitten in the house. The mother took the 3-year-old child with the kitten, put her underneath the kitchen sink, closed the cabinet door, and the mother says to the child, you be quiet and you keep that kitten quiet or he's going to kill it. 100% ruined this woman's life. She suddenly became anxious about everything and in charge of whether or not people were going to live and die. Even if she grew up, and she grew up to be a valuable member of the community, but she had this unrealistic thing in her that she carried around since the time of being 3 because of that event. And I, so grateful that the higher self says she will not have remembered that till after the session. And then we did the healing of it, and we brought in light, where does she carry that in her body? Because remember, so many of the physical things are encoded in the body chemistry, in the fashion, in the different places, and in the bladder, very often fear, and in the pit of the stomach. And we brought in light to all those places, and now it's gone.
Wow.
Now, nothing ever happened to the kitten. For those of you out there who may be wondering, all of that was fine. But just the possibility being and the responsibility of the mother who probably didn't think about it that way or that giantly, but it just changed that child's life, right? And that whole woman's life revolved around this incident.
That is so crazy. And you hear about it all the time within past life
Yes.
regression. It's the tiniest little, almost forgotten about things that you don't
Yeah.
think that really plays into the whole
Yeah.
program of your thinking, right? But
Mhm.
that's really like I was just thinking about this as you were talking about it. It really is like understanding like maybe your downfalls are the things that you're not proud about or the things that you want to change, or maybe you have certain ticks or whatever it is. It is ultimately because of the certain programming within your own mind, right? So there are give you an example. Let me think. And this is where you get like a lot of OCD people from. I've seen this before too. It's because that whenever things are out of order in some people's minds, then that means everything is going to spiral into out of orderedness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so all the light switches got to be this way or that way. It has to be uniform, because whenever things aren't uniform, I remember a time whenever it wasn't uniform and this is what happened kind of situation. And they're almost manifesting that energy because of that belief system. And it's almost turned into an egregore in and of itself, because now it's more than just a belief. In your mind, you know that this is going to happen if this is this way, you know, and it's just like pattern recognition. And that's the craziest thing, because our minds absolutely work off of pattern recognition. We're always trying to find certain patterns, and it can work in your favor. It can work against you equally in my experience. So if you're seeing, like, for example, in my own practice, and this is why ritual is very important, for any kind of divination or anything like that. Or even beyond that. I mean, people go into ritual all the time, maybe they'll just call it a habit or whatever, but it's essentially ritual. So for example, my tarot cards, I always have to have this giant crystal sitting on top of the deck. I have to. Like, if I don't have that crystal in my mind, I'm going to get not a very good connection to the other side of whoever I'm trying to manifest into this conversation through these tarot cards. I have to have the crystal. I have to almost get into a meditative space in my own mind and just get to the calm waters where nothing is happening. Everything is calm. And now I call in whatever it is, and I have to hold the deck with the crystal on the top and my hand on the bottom. And it's almost ritualistic. But my point is that some people, they forget that there is almost like a subconscious thing always running on in the background. And the point is to try and bring yourself to that conscious awareness in that moment to try and identify if it's working in your favor or working against you. So, I mean, in actuality, I could probably pull myself away from using the crystal. I could pull myself away from, all the different modalities, but in my mind, it works that way. So whenever I get a message, guaranteed I'm getting that proper, correct message. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably how like a lot of OCD people probably work too.
Yeah. You pulled a card about Dolores.
I did.
Were you saving it?
Actually, it was perfect timing. So the card we got is the Queen of Swords, which is pretty interesting because she's sitting there on a throne, which is kind of what we were talking a little bit about earlier.
That's Dolores.
The Queen of Swords represents intellect, clear communication, and sharp objective judgment, often embodying a cut to the chase mentality. It says that she is an independent, honest, and often perceptive figure who uses logic over emotions to navigate complex situations, boundaries, and truth. And so I got the card upright. So whenever the card is upright, she is a wise mentor or truth seeker. I'm like, oh my God, I literally called in Dolores for this. And that's exactly what we got.
Yes, you did. That's so fantastic.
So crazy.
I just love that so much. Just this morning I have a BQH immersion event coming up in May. I only have 10 spots. I filled all 10, and then 2 people have already had to postpone anyway. They're not showing up. So I still have 2 spots for BQH people. But one of the people who are coming, that's why I'm talking about this. Her name's Catherine, and I just learned about her. She woke up in 2022, and she was having a session. And during the session, it was a really high-level quantum healing session. But she was having the replay of a vision that she had back in the 1990s. And what she realizes during this session is, during this vision, this woman came to her, got out of a car, and like was walking towards her where she was in her house and then just stopped short. Anyway, she realizes during the session that was Dolores. And once that happened, like once she was like, oh my God, that was her. And I can't tell you how many people have actually had that experience. There's this one woman in Switzerland who was walking in the forest. She was Sweden or Switzerland. Sometimes I get them confused. Anyway, she's walking. She's walking in the forest, and all of a sudden, there's this older woman next to her, and she'd never seen her before. wasn't quite sure where she came from, and she just starts having a conversation with her. She says hello. She says hello. She says, my name is so and so. She says, my name is Dolores Cannon. And they just have this fantastic conversation and they're walking. And then at one point, she turns around and looks at her and she's not there anymore. This is way after Dolores passes. I mean, Dolores has been gone and she has this conversation and it's a high level conversation about consciousness, but she ends up looking her up and she never knew who she was. She had no idea, but it matched her photos. And then she starts doing the work. I actually have a session of hers on my YouTube somewhere. She's having a BQH session. It's an online session, meaning she's the client, another practitioner, a friend of mine named Priscilla, who's actually coming also here in May from the UK. She's doing the session, and as she's doing it, Priscilla starts seeing these colored lights sort of on her face, but she doesn't worry about it too much because people have things in their windows or on the wall or whatever. Well, she ends up at the end, it's this streaming in rainbow light, this rainbow color light that's coming in like on this column of light. There's nothing in the room that can make this. She ends up taking this video. Another boom for our online session is to, we have the recording of this incredible, supernatural light that's coming into this session that just illuminates everything. And it's all about more about Dolores and some of this. It's just incredible, some of the things that can happen. And the more you do this work, I think the more you invite that kind of thing into your world, the more you have conversations like this, the more you think about these kinds of things, the more possibility that you have to bring really true, expanded, miraculous things into your life.
Oh, totally agree. And I always tell everybody, like, look, after my first session that I ever got, had the session on where I was the client, it was like literally the next week or two that I felt like I was in a different reality. Like, I don't even know how else to put it. Like, it feels like you're in a dream.
Yeah.
And it was like everything was so synchronistic. Everything was. And it was like, it was at that moment that I really started to question reality because I was like, I just got hypnotized. I'm back. I'm not hypnotized anymore. Why am I still interpreting this reality as if I'm still under hypnosis? And it was the craziest thing. And that's really, I mean, you can get that through meditation. You can get that through plant medicine, whatever the case may be. It just takes you off of the track that you were once on.
Exactly.
And it brings you back into this remembering of maybe the energy that you were before you decided to incarnate.
Exactly. I think that's true. So,
Candace, this has been obviously a great conversation. I love you and really,
I love you too.
really love these kind of conversations because for the most part, you can't have these kind of conversations with, the everyday muggle out there without them looking at you like you got three eyes, which I like to wear. I like to keep my third eye right on the outside. But if anybody wants to be able to reach out to you or, reach out for a session or to maybe even learn BQH, how would they go about doing so?
QuantumHealers.com is my main website. I have a personal website, Candace Craw-Goldman, all strung together with no hyphens or anything, .com as well. But QuantumHealers.com, we've got a community. We have a directory listing and we've got classes. And I am big into creating some new classes. I put a lot of things on the back burner while I was taking care of Daddy, but I have more classes in the works. I actually, I do have a second class out there called Quantum Connect. So I do teach BQH, but Quantum Connect is a non-trance connection that is so much fun. It's a quick and easy way to show you how you're always connected to your higher self. It can be used as a tool in longer sessions, and counselors or other people, or just people who think this kind of stuff is fun. Learning Quantum Connect kind of takes you away from all of maybe the seriousness of the hypnosis concepts and procedures. So you can check that out too, Quantum Connect. All at quantumhealers.com. Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. How fantastic to be able to talk to you today.
Yes. Thank you so much. And be sure to text me all those links. I'll put them down in the show notes. That way people can have hyperlinks to go and check out all the information. I can't suggest enough people go and check out all of your work. I mean, I love the evolution of Dolores's teaching and just how you're essentially still in connection with her through channeling and through and with Pamela and everything else. I love all of that. I can't get enough of it. So I'll have all those links down in the show notes below. But if everybody would, to be able to support this channel, come over and check out patreon.com/metamystics. That link is down in the show notes below. We have a tier that is $3.33 a month. You can't get a gallon of gas for that these days. So if you would try and support the show in that way, we'd really appreciate that. If you want to be able to join us for our live shows every Wednesday night at 8 or 9 p.m., I'm still working on the timing over there. Then check out the next higher tier. It's called Wonder Wednesday, where you can be a fly on the wall in the conversation on the live show every Wednesday night, or you can input your own 2 cents into the conversation. Maybe you have a question for the guest or for me, or maybe you just have a general curiosity about something. Throw it out there. It is a very warming, welcoming kind of group that we have over at Patreon, and nobody's too weird. We like to keep it all the way weird over here. So go ahead and reach out, and if not, then maybe leave 5 stars, leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Really helps promote the show, and kind of feeds the algorithm a little bit. And unfortunately, that's just the way that we live, is by algorithms these days. So hasn't really been working in my favor lately. I'm not gonna lie about that, but we're gonna keep on pushing on, baby, because this information needs to get out. The wanderers hopefully find this show and all of the amazing guests that we have. So once more, thank you so much, Candace.
Thank you.
Cannot wait to do it again. But look, if Candace Craw-Goldman came here and she taught you anything, it's that you don't know what you don't know. So don't just get weird, stay weird.